Everybody, buckle up because today's guest needs zero introduction if you grew up watching college football. But here at Two Sports Dads, we're going to give him one anyway. This man was slinging it at Notre Dame from 2003 to 2006 and still owns the record books. We're talking over 11,000 passing yards, 95 touchdowns, 29 wins as a starter, numbers that 2 decades of Irish quarterbacks have tried to touch and couldn't do it. He's a 2-time captain, Heisman finalist, won the Maxwell Award, won the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award. This dude was must-see TV every single Saturday in South Bend. First-round pick in 2007, 22nd overall, and the Browns traded up to get him. He played 6 seasons in the league and then walks away and turns right around and becomes one of the sharpest analysts in the sport. Fox Sports since 2014. You've seen him on Big Noon Kickoff, breaking down football at the highest level. Still doing quarterback evaluations better than almost anybody because he's lived it. He's seen it from both sides of the headset now. He's married to an Olympic medalist, 3 daughters, and a son. Runs a foundation for veterans in his dad's honor. Generally one of the most interesting careers in football, and we've got him right here. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together. Let's welcome to the show, Brady Quinn.
Oh, look at the soundboard and everything. This is great, man.
This is well done. Operation, man.
Thank you. Now, I got to tell you though, we've updated addition to our family. We've now got a second son. He's like about a little over 18 months now, or almost 18 months, and then we added a dog to the family as well. So we're
a dog.
5 kids, 3 girls, 2 boys. Yeah, we're on our way, man. We're on our way. Loaded house.
Wow. That's crazy. Are you done? Is the question.
You know, it's funny. I was in Chicago for an event the other weekend, and obviously my wife calls the shots on that. I'd have as many kids as possible, but she was holding a baby. I'll put it this way. She was holding Ian Book's baby, and I looked at her and I said, "What do you think?" And she goes, "I could do a 6." Now, granted, she had a couple beverages at the time, so I haven't brought it up since. But I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Maybe there's a chance. We'll see.
And there you go, man. Maybe basketball's in the cards for the Quinn family instead of football, right? You got a whole basketball team with one sub. So, all right, man. Listen, before we get started, on a personal note, obviously, you know, we've got a little bit of history, and there's a good chance that Jordan would not be at Notre Dame if it wasn't for you. As everyone knows, you know, Jordan was going to Notre Dame to play lacrosse, but you saw him play football, right? And you and I would exchange some texts. What was it that you saw in Jordan, because he was a lot smaller at the time, that you thought he could actually play at Notre Dame?
Yeah, I think he possessed everything that, you know, from my experience going to Notre Dame, all the years that I was there, seeing guys come through the program, and then afterwards, I was like, this guy's perfect for Notre Dame. The character of who he was, how smart he was, and then you kind of watched him on the football field. I was like, man, he is tough as all get out. I mean, we were running a wing tee. I felt so bad for Jordan, man. I was like, this is not the system I'd be putting him in right now. We need to be running like a spread offense with him, but he never complained. He just did his job to the best of his ability. I mean, he was fast. And honestly, I didn't realize how fast he was until he kind of got to Notre Dame. And then I was like, okay, like he's fast. Like he's not just like quick and can make someone miss. Like he's fast. And he was elusive. Like he had this ability just to know how to make defenders miss. And so he inhabited all the traits that I think Notre Dame would be looking for a guy who, in his specific case, was probably like a slot receiver or cornerback. And obviously at that time, I didn't even see him really play any defense. I was just trying to coach him up as a quarterback coach, coaching a wing tee. So I probably didn't do much of anything. But if there was something there, I called at the time a guy by the name of Dave Poloquin, who now is at Michigan as their general manager. But I was like, hey, man, is this guy on our radar? And he's like, yeah, for lacrosse. I go, you guys need to bring him on the football team. I was like, he will make our football team. I was like, I promise you, like he's perfect at Notre Dame. He can play slot or cornerback, but he'll play something. And so fortunately, look, it was just a phone call, and I think it helped them kind of see what he was capable of. And then once he got there, he did the rest. But like, you better believe, man, when he got the training camp, I called up and I was like, hey, how's my boy doing? They're like, best kid in camp.
Well,
it wasn't even that. It was just like, I was curious because, again, like, I've said this to Quincy all the time, Jeremy, so I'm not just blowing smoke. Like, I'm like, he's the type of young man that, like, you want to marry your daughter. I'm sure Drake's the same exact way. I don't know him as well. I just know him from afar. But you meet some of these young men and you're like, man, I hope my daughter meets a kid like this one day. Like, I hope my daughter meets a good guy like this one day. And that, if you can say that about a young man, that's like, yeah, you want him to be part of your team. So I was more just kind of curious. And his first comment was, he goes, best in camp. I go, what do you mean, for like the freshman? He goes, no, he's the best kid we've had in camp. Like, he's blown everyone away, how he separates, his work ethic, everything else. And I go, all right, like I'm excited to see where this goes then. And obviously Jordan's done the rest, and you've raised an incredible young man. So I was just excited to see like a guy like him get that opportunity. Like, I'm sure Jeremy's excited for Drake and the opportunities that he's been given at Notre Dame and being able to play there as well and get that education.
Yeah, man. Listen, I never would have thought that he would have become a starter in football. So never said this publicly. Thank you from his dad for what you did, and you might look at it as a phone call, but it changed the trajectory of his life potentially, right? So I want to really say thank you before we got to get this thing going.
Well, again, I appreciate it. That's all you guys, man. That was all you raised in them and everything. And you got two great young men. So, credit to you guys, what you guys done as parents.
I appreciate it, man. Well, let's hop into this, right? So we're going to talk about the upcoming football season. You've been a quarterback at the highest level from a college standpoint, from a pro standpoint, and now you're at Fox Sports. And I want to talk about Fox Sports. Like, what actually goes into the college football season as an analyst, right? And is it similar to really preparing as a quarterback for a game? Because all we see is what happens on Saturdays. You guys are having a good time, but I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff that goes behind the scenes.
There's a lot, and it's changed, obviously, as the college football landscape has changed. With the transfer portal specifically, I mean, you're studying these rosters starting back into the spring. Whereas you were kind of looking at a different, I would say 10 years ago when I was doing this, you were studying them, but you're thinking, okay, this guy's going from a sophomore to a junior. It just wasn't as transient. Now you're looking at teams, Ohio State, for example, who's ranked number 1. They've got 40 new guys in their team between the transfer portal and freshmen. And this is a team that everyone thinks is the best in college football to start the season. So even a team like that has that many new faces and new people who are going to be involved. And whether it's as a starter or for depth, it's just a completely different world. So the studying really starts back in the spring. You start really following a lot of the storylines, a lot of the depth charts, the health of players and so forth, any position battles you're keeping an eye on. And then it builds into the season, and you're trying to watch a lot of tape as you prepare for a lot of those games. I always say, if you're calling a game, it's like digging a mile deep, an inch wide. You're really focusing on that game like you would be a quarterback. So I'm watching first, second down, I'm watching third down, red zone, and really breaking the game up into situations to get an idea of the identity of each one of those teams before I call a game. If I'm doing a pregame show, it's different. We're digging like an inch down and then like a mile wide. So I've got to be able to talk about every top 25 team out there, any other storylines that are more topical in college football. And so you really have to venture into the storytelling art of it, and then being able to summarize what could be, a much deeper conversation when you have 3 hours to talk about in a game in about a minute to talk about it on a pregame show. So it's a lot of film. It's a lot of memorization of rosters. And that's probably the biggest thing that we're trying to portray, and really just trying to share, with people, like, the story of some of these players, and a lot of the good of what they're doing out there on the field.
That's interesting. And so now you guys are partnering with Barstool, right?
Yeah. So that's a good way of looking at it. I mean, they're doing a lot of shows for FS1, and we have them out there before our pregame show. So working with them, partnering with them, however you want to describe it, that's probably the best way of doing it. Yeah.
Is that a different dynamic? Because they're a little bit more loose, right, when it comes to the show, right? And Dave Portnoy, he's a character, to say the least. But how is it working with guys like that, given that you go through all this preparation and you still got to be loose, right, on Saturday mornings?
Yeah, look, it's a different medium, and you have to kind of understand where you can and can't go in certain ways. Like, I think they've learned a lot about that too from working on TV. There's certain things you can't say, you can't do, that they've been able to do in the digital world. And, for us, I think we're more of like, we kind of walk into it like, whoa, like, he just said that. But then you kind of forget, like, all right, this clip is on somewhere digitally, so we're not going to get in trouble with our bosses about it. But that doesn't mean we're not going to get in trouble with a university or someone else out there who cares, and whether it's their parents or the player or someone else. So I just always come away with, like, there's two ways of always looking at the sport. You can be negative, you can be positive. I try to lean more positive whenever possible. And I'm just being mindful of like my mom's watching, like someone else's mom's watching. Like you got to be careful what you say. I think sometimes that gets lost in the environment and the emotion because it is a crazy environment. I mean, there's a bunch of 17, 18 to 22, 23, 24 year olds in college now who are out there who are obviously, depending on where you're at, not to take a shot at Penn State, but they could be really excited, hyped up to be there with some of the extracurricular activities they're doing. So,
Exactly.
So shifting gears to Notre Dame and recruiting, part of the podcast we like is like mine was football, baseball. Quincy's were both, lacrosse, football. My other one was just drafted by the Reds,
awesome.
so hopefully he's in Ohio by you soon. But he was, a lot of people don't know he was recruited football, Illinois safety. Said I want nothing to do with football, Dad. Drake used to laugh at me. I don't even know coverages. I'm just going to get the ball, and then Oklahoma State. So, but what we like to do on this podcast is we don't break down film. We don't really have those kind of takes. It's a lot of like education with fun with parents and stuff. So we like to talk about the recruiting. So like, for Jordan, it was Notre Dame. You had a part in that. Growing up a football player when Drake's age was, and a lot of those other kids, SEC was king, right? How do I get to the SEC? How do I get to the SEC? And I still remember that whole recruiting journey. And it starts early and it runs deeper. And I remember Notre Dame, as Drake sat me in a room. He said, I tried to say no since I left because I didn't want to stay up north. And we're in St. John. We're right outside Chicago, so we probably weren't far from you. I'm an hour and 15, which is great for game days for me. But he said, I can say no to a bunch of coaches, but I can't say no to Coach Free. And Coach Free got these guys almost to commit to him. It's probably not his goal because then he showed them the university. And so the university then at some point took over that drive. You from a parent's perspective, you look at guys like yourself, you look at Ian. I was in California for my daughter's softball, saw Manti, and I'm like, go Irish, trying not to. He's just out at the beach being normal. And he's like, just talking, and you guys know the players, the community. It made it a special place. Even for somebody who grew up in Texas, was a diehard Longhorn. It's like now I'm like that over the top Notre Dame fan. Like we're independent because, but for you growing up, like, and so taking it out of that, it's just everybody has a recruiting journey. What was it like and why Notre Dame? Like, back when you recruited and then what made you choose Notre Dame?
Yeah, so probably similar to you, Jeremy, like, being a Texas guy, like I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. I went and saw a ton of Ohio State games. When people always ask me, like, who was your favorite college football team? I don't know that I necessarily had a favorite team. I just know that I probably rooted for Ohio State more so than any other team because of the proximity I was to that campus and those football games. I mean, I remember, as the youngest ages I can remember going to tailgates, throwing the football around, maybe not even going into the game. And, we'd be throwing passes in between groups of people and stuff, trying to hit those different windows like you're a quarterback in the game. So Ohio State was very much involved in the process. Michigan was as well. Notre Dame, during my recruitment, they initially had recruited me with Bob Davie. But I think to your point about Marcus Freeman and what's made him different and how he's been able to recruit at such a high level, whether it's players are recruiting or are committing to go play for him and committing to him, or if it's they're seeing how genuine he is with those conversations, and then they're able to see the university and what it has to offer along with that. For me, it was not that with Bob Davie. They opened up the doors to me as a recruit, but, you really didn't talk to Coach Davie much. You didn't have that sort of relationship. It was early on in my high school career when I was being recruited by them. But at the same time, it was more of like, hey, this is Notre Dame. Like, you should just want to come here. And it wasn't until Tyrone Willingham came in. This is following, obviously, the issue with George O'Leary. So there's a bit of a gap in my recruitment where my receiver, Chinedu Ndukwe, like Quincy's talking about whatever impact I had on Jordan going to Notre Dame, the Ndukwe family had a monumental impact on my journey to Notre Dame. His eldest brother, Kalechi, who went to Notre Dame, he was in the ROTC, he's now still serving in the Navy, as a commander of a warship. So I had gone up there when I was in junior high with his family just because Chinedu was one of my best friends. And so we'd take a road trip with the family, go up and run around campus and stuff. So I'd see it from time to time. And that was really the only connection I had to it until Bob Davie started recruiting me. But again, there wasn't like as strong of an interest. So it came down to when Ty Willingham got there and Chinedu had committed. His dad came over one summer night, knocked on our door because they knew I was about ready to make a decision before my senior year. And I'd said to them, I said, I'd like to give it one more look, but we don't have any time. I can't go to camps. Those are all done. Like, I guess I could go up for an academic visit. So we both went up together one more time. And, again, going around campus, I've been before. It felt a little different. Something spiritually was kind of tugging at my heart, I think, as I was searching for what would make the most sense for me developing as a young man. But then it was just a conversation with Ty. And, Coach Willingham was the type that he wasn't a BSer. He was very genuine. He wasn't going to lie to you and say, hey, you're going to come in and start, or you're going to come redshirt, then you're going to be the guy for the next 3 or 4 years. Like, it was none of that. Only thing he said to me was, he goes, you'll have a chance to come in and compete. He goes, and that's all I'll ever say, because that's the same thing I'll say to anyone else who comes into my program. You'll have the chance to come in and compete. And he was the most honest and genuine man that I was around. From talking to him, from being around him, he was just the type of guy that you want to be molded by as a young man. And so as I kind of sat back and looked at all of the pros and cons of really Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, and Tennessee were kind of my final four, Notre Dame just kind of came away as the place that fit me best. And in part, again, to what you touched on with Marcus, was you have to factor in the head coach. As much as you try not to, because you know that, hey, that guy could be gone. There's also the element of, like, that's also the guy you're still going to play for. And you think of the positive, like, we're going to win a national championship together. So Tyrone Willingham, without a doubt, had a huge role in my decision to go there because of the man he was, and very similar to, I think, how he recruited and how genuine he was, like Marcus.
Yeah. And I like how you said that, because with the world of college football right now, the NCAA sports, right? Like, it was really hard to tell your kid to commit to an institution, right? Like, I try to draw everything parallels to relationships. Like, I didn't commit to the institution of marriage. I committed to my wife, right? Like, and because of that, I'm committed to the institution of marriage. So it's really hard. Like, yeah, I know you're choosing Coach Freeman, right? But then I think he does a great job at not putting himself first. In those, you see that, but as alongside it, you find this commitment to the institution of Notre Dame, right? And then you fall in love with it. So if he does leave, he did a good job of putting you in a good place in case that is to go. But with that, and you living in it, now so much in the world, you just talked about, and you might have already answered this question. Like, what would be your advice to, like, we have high school kids listening, we have some stuff listening, and parents, and I think we've had a couple questions. Where's the podcast? Because we were traveling with travel softball is brutal. I know you got a lot of daughters. Good Lord, that's a schedule that I can't keep. But what would be your advice, given the NIL, transfer portal, and everything out, to a kid getting recruited now in 2026? Yeah. Like, what's your best takeaway for that?
I think, I think of today's world, and it's obviously very different than when I was there, but there's still a couple commonalities. And the one is, like, the genuine interest. Even, for example, talking about CJ Carr, he's recently been open about his recruitment from Tommy Rees, and just how Tommy was persistent. And Tommy was there constantly recruiting him, saying, like, I know your last name's Carr and your ties to Michigan, but, I'm going to make you say no. And I think it's real. Like, if you have a coach who loves you to the point where he's constantly calling, constantly texting, constantly building that relationship with you, he's not just wasting his time with this. Like, trust me, there's too many recruits out there. There's too many, other things that could be pulling his attention away for him to be spending that much time, with one particular recruit. So to me, like, if someone's paying a lot of attention to you and trying to build that relationship with you, that's real. Like, you gotta kind of lean into that a little bit too, and don't just say, hey, I want to start looking in a different direction because it's this program or it's that coach called me a couple times. Like, they might have a lot of other guys too that are trying to recruit before you. So the connection to that coach, to that place, oftentimes is the effort that they're putting in and the relationship that they're trying to develop. So that's the first thing. The second thing I'll just say is you got to be, to me, like, a little patient with the process. I know everyone's trying to expedite how fast guys make a decision. But to me, I think you got to get up there on campus. I think you got to get up there and see practice if you can, and get around the coaching staff, get around some of the players to really get a true feel. I was someone who I went on a lot of different visits. I was around some of the players and other teams and so forth on those unofficial visits, but I only took one official visit because I'd been around enough of other programs and enough of other players to kind of get a sense and feel. But it wasn't like nowadays where you get a lot of these like mail-in offers or, however they're, contacting them, where you're getting offers without actually going there. Like, I'll never forget going to Michigan, who at that point in time, I'd gotten probably 25 some offers. They were yet to offer. And all it was Scott Loeffler was the quarterback coach. He just wanted to see me throw in person. And I will never forget warming up throwing after like probably 5-10 minutes. He just took me off the field. We went to go meet Lloyd Carr, and that was it. Like, all he wanted to do was confirm what he saw on film, because we had built up a great relationship with one another, but he just wanted to see it in person. And honestly, for me, as a kid who grew up in Columbus, like, and I'd been up to Michigan a little bit, but not like that, to see the inner workings of the program, it became that much more attractive, to where I was like, man, am I really going to leave Columbus, Ohio, and like never be able to come back here ever again? Like, that's usually how it works, right? Like, if you're from Ohio and you leave to go to Michigan, like, man, that's kind of it. That's the end of it. So, that's how hard the recruitment was, but also how I think the relationship that I built with the staff there, and also even just going there, like getting my feet on campus, get a feel for it, made me feel more and more comfortable. And I know all these kids say it now, they're like, where is home? That's real, though. And I think the more you can be at a place to get a feel for it, the better feel you're going to have for what your next 3, 4, 5 years look like.
Yeah. I tell the lacrosse kids the same thing, because everyone wants to go to the Blue Bloods. You go where you're liked, right? Where you want it. You don't want to go somewhere. If they didn't recruit you hard, chances they're not going to give you a lot of opportunity on the field, right?
No.
Deal with people they love. All right, so let's shift gears. Let's talk a little bit NFL. So the entire NFL draft process. How did you manage the pressure, the adversity that you maybe felt on draft night? We've got a lot of kids who potentially can go to the draft from Notre Dame this year. And what advice would you give those athletes that might be going through something similar?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, like, going into the season, obviously you have to focus on ball, everything that's there. I mean, I had the opportunity, obviously, to leave after my junior year. I felt like, for me, I wanted to get my degree from Notre Dame. I wanted another year with Coach Weiss, and really with, like, my class, to try to accomplish the goals that we had set out to accomplish. We had a really strong class, a lot of great players, great athletes, and so it was kind of felt like unfinished business a bit. And, obviously it didn't work out the way we'd hoped it would that year, but I still think there was, like, a lot of maturity and growth that came with that. And for me personally, just kind of like turning that chapter in my life, like, it would have been hard, I think, for me to want to be able to go back, finish my undergrad, and then continue on at some point after my NFL career. But I would say what's paramount, more bigger than anything else, is how the team performs, how the team does, and that's where sometimes it gets lost. And I think there's players who get too focused on, that draft day and their evaluation and these mock drafts and what goes up. None of that stuff matters. Like, all these guys on these mock drafts have no clue how the organizations actually see it. So you really got to put blinders on. And that's become harder to do, I think, for these young men than it was back when we were, coming out in the draft, because that stuff didn't really ramp up until after the season. So, like, every week you get a new mock draft and they're like, oh, someone's slipping. We're like, no one's even playing football right now. Like, how can we possibly be going up and down in someone's, like, mock draft? It's all built for TV. It's all built for ratings. So just keep that in mind. But I would say this: prepare your parents for it. And that was the thing. Like, when I went to the draft, and obviously that was kind of a story deal that day. The night before, I met with a team or spoke to a team outside the top 10. So it became, once I was after the Dolphins, after number 9, and I started to fall in the first round, it was uncharted territory. And the thing is like, as a player, you're kind of calloused and you're accustomed to that sort of feeling where, like, things aren't going the way you want. You're just waiting for the opportunity to kind of turn around the other way. But your parents aren't. Like, they haven't been on the same stage as you have in most cases. And so that's the hard part, is trying to make sure that they are understanding that, hey, anything can happen. You can be told a lot of things by agents. You can be told a lot of things by teams. Until draft day comes, you never really know the true intentions, the true feelings. It's flipped from your college recruitment. Like, they're the ones making the decision now. And so that's where you look at someone like Shedeur Sanders and all the things that were maybe said to him throughout the course of that process. It becomes eye-opening, and it's tough to have to deal with that. But as long as you keep that chip on your shoulder and hopefully you find yourself in a good situation, circumstance, you can make the most of it. But I would just say keep a blinders on, and preparing your family for the unknowns of the draft is probably the biggest thing. That's always that stood out for me.
It's interesting, right? Is there's a lot of hype around the draft, right? With all the mock drafts and guys that don't know ball. We're starting to get a lot of hype, right? At Notre Dame. They're even Paul Feinbaum, whatever his name is. He goes, they should be 1A and 1B, which is crazy that he has us up there. But for me, it feels like the okie doke, right? Is they're trying to blow us up so we don't prepare. What are your expectations for our season this year?
Look, I was in a similar position coming in my senior year. We were very highly ranked. I don't know if we were maybe one, but we were somewhere in the 2, 3, 4 in most consensus preseason rankings. And the tough part for me was like coming back that senior year, we were going to have to fill some spots on defense. Like I knew that was going to be a tough spot for us because my junior year, I don't know if statistically it was our best defense. We probably were a little bit better early on there. But between the last 2 years with Weiss, our junior year defense was definitely better than my senior. And, coming into it, like there was a number of times we would get into games where Charlie would come in and be like, hey, we got to outscore him. We got to make sure we have the ball last sort of conversation. And so the tough part about all that is none of the rankings matter. Nothing else matters till the ball is kicked and you get out there in the field. But you have to realize you're Notre Dame. You're always going to get everyone's best shot, but in particular when you're one of those teams that has a big number in front of you. And I'll never forget my senior year, we go down to Atlanta to play Georgia Tech. And they had a guy named Calvin Johnson. And they had a few other really good players on defense too. And John Tenuta was their defensive coordinator. So he's a guy who liked to bring a lot of pressure. We're starting a true freshman right tackle. And that place was ramped up. It was a night game. Everything was kind of ready to go. There you go. And trust me, it was loud. It was crazy. Like those fans were great. But we ended up pulling it out, tough, low-scoring win. And all of a sudden, the first thing is you start dropping the rankings. And everyone's like, they're not as good as we thought they're going to be. It's like, well, first off, we don't even know how good Georgia Tech is. I think they ended up playing for the ACC championship that year. So they were obviously better than people gave them credit. But also for us, we were still trying to kind of find our identity for this year's team. And this is what I think is most important is oftentimes because of last year's success, people look at and they cast forward into this upcoming season saying well, they're going to be good because of what they did last year and who they've come. It's like, no. You are reinventing yourself again this year with this year's team. So as much as you have potential, you still have to build to that identity. And you can't get lost in someone thinking you're better than you are when you really don't know who you are yet. So that was always the motivating thing to me was trying to make sure people realize that hey man, we still have to reinvent what we're good at. What can we hang our hat on? What's our identity offensively? What's our identity defensively? And how we can respond to adversity and all those things. Because every year it's a new team. Even though it feels like you got some of the same faces, there's still going to be some changes.
Yeah, and your opponents with the portal is going to be new, right? You don't know who Wisconsin is. Wisconsin's got a whole new team from other teams. I mean, from other places.
Well, yeah, and to that point, I worry about those early games. One, it's been a bit of a sore spot, I think, for Notre Dame in past years, those early kind of stumbles. But, also when you look at it, what does Wisconsin have to lose? I mean, Luke Fickell knows there's pressure on him. They're going to throw the kitchen sink at a week one game versus Notre Dame. So you have to expect it from everywhere, all over, all three phases, to be able to get things that in a game that you really don't have much film to go off of because there's so many changes there. What's going to happen, what to expect. So those games end up being, again, no one has high expectations for Wisconsin, so we don't know what they're going to be, but they end up being a lot harder for the unknown than people on the outside are willing to entertain. Same thing with Pat Fitzgerald, Michigan State. Everyone's writing off Michigan State. I'm like, this dude took the Northwestern to the Big Ten championship game. He was able to do more with less there at a place where now he's got resources. Now he's got a lot of athletes there. You don't think he's going to be able to maximize their potential and their ability? He's going to find a game plan that works for them, and they're going to try to go execute that every single week. And if the other team stumbles or falls, that's where they pull off the upset. So, look, everyone's going to make whatever the schedule is this year for Notre Dame. I think it's always going to be tougher than people want to give it credit because you're Notre Dame, but especially when you have that big ranking next to your name.
Yep.
And Notre Dame-USC, that's been a hot topic. I didn't know the rivalry till we lived the rivalry, and I think Q and I freshman year lived it together, talking to Keyshawn while he was on the sideline. What was that like for you playing it all the years, being and now living it, and then us living it? We had our feelings, but what was that like for you? One, when there was a disconnect and it didn't happen, but now seeing it at least come back for that 2030. What made it so special, and then why are you glad the deal's reinstated for at least the short term?
I mean, when I first got there, I really didn't understand how big of a rivalry it was. I understood to what degree. I mean, you're playing for a Shillelagh, and you understood the history behind the rivalry. But, I was a kid from Columbus, Ohio. So the rivalry that I always thought in the back of my mind was Ohio State, Michigan. I'm like, there's nothing bigger than that. Yeah. I understand the hatred between the two. But this was different. It was one where you kind of got a sense for, how both sides kind of feel about one another. And obviously at that point in time, Pete Carroll had SC rolling. And we were kind of trying to find ourselves, I think, in Notre Dame, building from, Lou to Bob Davie, and then working into, Ty Willingham, and then obviously into Charlie Weiss. But it was like we were still trying to kind of build up the program to get back to that. And they were at a top point in time where they were as good as USC has ever been. Maybe probably the best 3-4 years ever during the Pete Carroll span. I mean, they had won back-to-back national championships. Were going for a third. So as that grew on more and more, you kind of realized just how big the rivalry was, not only between the two schools, but for college football. And how much history is behind it, and how, the first interaction was like Joe Montana, first time I get to meet him, is down on the field with his sons throwing the football before the game my freshman year when I was at home. And I'm like, holy cow, it's got to be a big game if Joe's back for this, right? And he's trying to give me some tips and all that stuff beforehand. So as you start to see the celebs pulling and everything else, you're like, oh, okay. You see Will Ferrell on the sideline heckling you. You're like, oh, damn. Like, all right, like that's real. Like, it's a big, there's Snoop Dogg. Like, you start to realize like what that game, means, not only just again for the schools and the history between the two and how it came about, but just college football in general. And so that's why, look, when it went away, I looked at it and said, it's a shame for all of the players to not be able to take part in it. And whether you win or lose, it's, again, just the experience to understand it. It's a different type of rivalry. I mean, two different parts of the country kind of clashing together, and just even the different styles of how they go about doing it. So that's what was like frustrating for me the most is, again, like didn't have any success in that rivalry versus that period of time. That was their era of time to win it, but still to not have that chance, it's just to play in it, to not have the chance to get into that fight. That's what it kind of tears at me. And obviously, it'll come back at some point, 2030, I believe it is. I'm hoping that still stays the case. Anything can change nowadays in college football. But just the experience, man, of it is what stands out to me. Because that's like the good in college football.
Awesome. Well, I know we're coming up on the end, but two questions that you can piece in together, and we love that you've given us the time, but we'll roll them in. One, you have a wife who's also an athlete, right?
Just a little bit.
Yeah, right. I did some looking up on that. So I picture, I see pictures of like last year, CJ and Kenny sitting on the sideline, right? Like going over stuff. When it comes to parenting, right, and you're both athletes, like a few questions is that how you two are sitting on the sidelines? When there's pressures and you're teaching your kids and you're going through it, things like that. And I guess rolling into that, does the house get super competitive? And then lastly, she's you're either the starter and she's the backup, or I'm sure roles can reverse. What's the best piece of advice your wife's probably ever given you? In those moments?
I think, well, I guess I'd describe it like this. Maybe not advice, but probably the best way we've been able to kind of like, work together as a team. And I think it's really interesting, not to get off on a complete tangent, but like, in gymnastics, it's really an individual sport. Like they do have a team, but they're still kind of going out there and performing individually. If they mess up, it's not like it's because of one of their teammates, right? It's like it's their routine. It's what they're doing. And so we've had a lot of conversations just about like teamwork and communication, in part because there's like none of that with what she does, and there's a lot of that with football and like being in more of a team environment. So a lot of our conversations have been about kind of how we go about communicating things to our kids, in particular our girls, because they're old enough to be in club soccer and all the other sports. But a lot of it's been kind of centered around that, how we're communicating to them. How, are we communicating effectively? Are we listening to them? Are we reading their nonverbal communication and really knowing like how to push their buttons to motivate them? Because they're all different. And we want to push, but we don't want to be those parents who are like pushing too hard where it pushes them away. I think you got to be cognizant of that. So it's probably been that. It's probably been, she's talked a lot about just our communication, how we're going about doing it, how we're going about trying to get each one of our daughters at this juncture to be able to, maximize their abilities. I mean, we try to, as a team, to like really draw on the parallels in every sport to the next, where you can take away something and say, hey, it's like doing this in basketball. It's like doing this in soccer. It's like doing this in lacrosse or whatever the sport we're talking about, or even swimming, like our girls do swim in the summers. And we've tried to really draw on those. And then we take that and we say, and just like in sport, this is how you need to do it as a student. And just like in sport, this is how you're going to do it one day as a mom, as a wife, or for your sister. Like we're trying to really use sports as that catalyst for them to understand, like, this is shaping you as a human, and what you're going to be one day as you get older. And so, like, understand that's why we're coaching you hard here, because it's going to pay off here. And that's probably like the biggest thing I think our focus has been, as they start to grow into, like, adolescents and young adults, and hopefully have a positive impact on the world.
So I wrestled throughout my life, right, which is an individual sport.
I didn't know that, man.
Yeah,
didn't know that.
Yeah. I wrestled at Bucknell.
Quincy in a Bucknell singlet. I love it.
But one of the parallels that I always draw to the individual sports and how it relates to a team sport is, if you do your job, the team will take care of itself, right? Same thing when you're playing football, right? If you go try to do someone else's job, it's not going to work. But if you do your job and 11 guys do their job, perfection, we'll be okay, right? And that's, my kids didn't want to wrestle, which I was kind of upset about, but things turned out okay.
I was going to say, man,
Life through sport.
I would always see the football background and everything else. I was like, okay, all right, Quince, I see you. I was like, usually in Ohio, you start off young, and you have to wrestle at least for a year or two. It's like gymnastics for some families. Like, you got to put your kids in gymnastics because you teach them how to fall and not break their arms, so they kind of learn how to balance and get strong and how to fall. But like wrestling, I feel like it's that in Ohio. Like, usually you start off young. So my son's almost there. It's just whether or not he's going to do jiu-jitsu or actually traditional wrestling.
I tried to get the boys into it, but Kristen and I went to the same school, so she saw me during my wrestling days, and I got like one of those mat skin infections, and she goes, "Oh no, I can't getting on the mat with what I just seen on your face."
Yeah, I get it. That's definitely a downside to it.
Cool. Well, listen, man, we're running out of time here. I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about your foundation, and then we'll have some fun for like 2 minutes if you got some time.
Yeah, look, I've got a foundation called the Third and Goal Foundation. I had a lot of New England coaches, throughout the course of my career. Charlie Weiss when I was in college, and Romeo Cornell, and Brian Dable, and Josh McDaniels, and Eric Mangini, all these guys. And Third and Goal was really like that pivotal moment in the game that kind of gets overlooked, where it's a swing between a touchdown or probably kicking a field goal. And that 4-point swing kind of adds up over all 4 quarters. So I always felt like it was a fitting name for a foundation where we're helping out veterans and their families, and we're interjecting at a critical point in their life. And we do it in 3 ways. We have Operation Home. We make homes handicap accessible for wounded veterans. Operation Education. We've got educational programs at Ohio State and Cincinnati, Bowling Green. We're going to be introducing this year in Toledo. So we've done some work to it at the University of Notre Dame. And then we have Operation Joy. So we're really helping out, especially during the holidays, military families in need. So those are the 3 main ways we do it. We feel like we're being able to help a lot of individuals and families who are finishing their service, getting back into civilian life, and looking for some help in doing so. So last year we were able to help over 2,000 veterans, and we keep building on every year that number. So 16 years strong.
How can people help? Our listeners help? Is there a place where they can go donate money? If they're in Ohio, can they donate time? Like, tell us a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say, we always ask for 2 things. If you want to support financially, great. 3andg.com. Usually that's the easiest way. The number 3, ANDG.com. You'll find us there. And then really volunteering. If you're in the Ohio area, we've got plenty of opportunities to do so. So all you have to do is kind of log on and reach out to us, and we'll work with you on whatever the next event is or whatever the next deal we've got going on to help out with volunteering. So those are the 2 easiest ways. We always look to, though, the other thing is, I'll just say this generally, to me, the nonprofit space and charitable space, it's not competitive to me in the sense of I'm trying to partner. If we like to specialize in what we do, but if there's hey, we've got a veteran who's got this need, hey, let's go find another veteran service who does that, right? Let's go partner, let's branch out and find ways of building that network to get them the help that they need. We might not do it, but let's go find someone else who does. So I've been fortunate to meet a number of charities that obviously there's a ton that support veterans. It's a very passionate cause for a lot of us. But also, to me, hey, man, we're not working against each other. We're all working for the same cause. So if you got a charity that works with veterans and we might be able to help out, we might be able to partner together, a team up, let me know. Please reach out to the website. That's always the easiest way, but we'd love to help out in whatever way we can.
Cool.
I thank you for your time. Just one fun question for the Notre Dame fans. Who's your Mount Rushmore of Notre Dame players?
Man, this could go so many different ways. It could be guys that I've always enjoyed their personality. Like I love Joe. Joe Montana's been always so good to me, and every time I'm around him, he's a legend. He's awesome. Last time I saw him was Ireland for the Notre Dame Navy game, which was a ton of fun. Rocket's always up there. Jerome Bettis is always up there. Just like good dude, super cool. Always good to kind of see him interact. I would say though, I would probably go with my offensive line though. Like I miss those guys. Like I'm telling you, like John Sullivan at center, Ryan Harris, left tackle for a lot of it. I mean, it'd be all those guys, man. It'd be Bob Morton, Dan Santucci, Mark LaVore, Dan Stevenson, Jim Molinaro playing on the right side, Sam Young playing on the right side. Like that's more than four, but like those would be my dudes. Like if there's one thing I'm missing like now more than ever, it's just not being able to like sit and listen to those guys crack on each other and just, how they normally were. Thursday nights, all going to Bruno's back in the day, getting the all-you-can-eat buffet. So I'm helping out coaching my nephew's team in 8th grade now. And I'm just like, man, like I miss these times because I remember like how we were while we're practicing, but like also how we were hanging out after the game or on the weekends, whatever else. So that would be my Mount Rushmore.
No wonder the offensive guys always get the better sponsorship deals. They always give the best answers. I'm listening to the CJ and Marcus at the eatery thing the other day, and I'm like, dude, Drake is a middle linebacker. He would never speak like that. He'd just be hounding food. Jordan gets the sexy roll back. I'm waiting for like Manti, all this stuff from Brady's mouth, and then he's like, all right, I'm going to have to pay for this at the next dinner. I'm going with my offensive line. I'm like, that was beautiful.
I will say this much, like CJ is so more refined than I was in like every way as a quarterback at Notre Dame. Because my dad was a Marine, all right? So if anyone has ever seen me eat, they know I eat a lot and I eat fast, and it is not pretty. So there would be no way I'd be picking through things and cutting it up. I'd be shoving that stuff in my mouth as fast as possible.
Talking about the Brussels sprout, how it needs to
Brussels
be. Brussels sprouts.
I'm a meat and potatoes, man. Like, give me the protein.
And I'm like, Drake, that's why you get a jersey signing and they get these kind of things. Look at Jordan and Robeck, and then Brady gives that answer. I'm like, I would never even thought. Like my offensive line, got to stick with them.
Yeah, man.
Perfect.
I mean, and honestly, like those are some of the guys that I keep in touch with, but it's hard. Like that's the one tough thing about Notre Dame is it's so national. Like we had guys from all over the country, and so after you're done. And this is something I think Marcus and Hunter Biven in particular, Notre Dame have done a tremendous job of. It's like getting guys back, getting those past guys back to be able to come back on campus and feel good about, seeing the program where it's at, opening the doors to them. It's helpful because it's not like, Texas or, Ohio State where like when guys move back to Columbus, like, all right, that's easy. They're there locally. They never really left. Guys are all over the place. So that's one thing that I've been happy to see. And it's hard to make it with 5 kids, but I try to make it up there whenever I can.
We ran into Ricky Waters at the Super Bowl, and that was
one of the
things he mentioned was like, no one ever reaches back out, and so Coach Free made it a point for the senior class to pick up the phone and call these guys and ask for advice, right, coming up into this season. I think from the '88 team or whatever that was, but it's important, man. We got legends,
dude.
Right,
Ricky. I will never forget first seeing Ricky Waters. It's like, damn, he was big. Like I remember my favorite player was Jerry Rice when I was growing up because I was like first receiver. I remember seeing him when he came to speak to us. It might have been my freshman or sophomore year. I was like, holy cow, like dudes had to tackle that guy. He was massive. And then you like realize like how well he moved for his size. He always impressed me. Like I've always felt like he was a guy that I don't know that he's ever gotten the credit like of the player that he was at like every single level. He was incredible. And so it's always, that's the thing is there were so many good players that came before you at Notre Dame. I mean, that's the fun part about talking about the history of it.
Yeah, you got to reach back, right? That's part of the DNA. So, look, we appreciate it, man. This has been some good time. We went a little bit over where we wanted to be.
That's
but,
all right.
Thanks for your time. And, Jeremy?
Two Sport Dads.
Well, that was weak. Say it like you mean it.
They're going to edit it, bro. They're going to edit it. Like, dude, I can't give introductions or exits like you do, right?
That's great. Hey, just say go Irish. Just say go Irish, Jeremy.
Go Irish. Just do it on 3. Go Irish. It's an Irish podcast.
All right, man. I appreciate it.
All right, guys.
Thanks, Brady.
Thanks for having me.
See you.